We need to build 2.1 billion homes in the next few decades. If we want to do that, we have to take into consideration questions of equality, but also of climate. Because if we build those 2.1 billion homes in the way that we're building today, there will be no more planet to inhabit.
So we're really interested in thinking about housing differently, taking it out of the hands of developers and putting it back into the hands of everyday people, but using automation and using digital technology to do that, and doing that in a really localized way. This is basically a prototype for democratizing construction.
This is kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? House block is really a blank slate for people to imagine what their lives could be like if they had the ability to change and adapt their homes.
So the house, I think it's interesting that maybe on first view it can be recognized that it has slabs and people immediately recognize it as that it's a domestic space. It has a staircase, it has rooms, it has spaces. But then on second view, it actually has nothing in common with any normal building. If you look closely at it, you will not recognize anything that you know from a normal building. There are no bricks, there are no beams, there are no columns. You'll see that it's actually just a single part that is constructing everything. The boxes are, we call them discrete elements or discrete building blocks. And it's really an attempt to reset construction. It's a question, what are the elementary particles that we built with? What is the very material that we built with? And we believe that to automate architecture, that we need to rethink very fundamentally from the ground up what we built with.
So a block is assembled from one sheet of timber. These ones are assembled out of plywood, and you have about 8 pieces that go together, first for an inner frame and then for the outer frame, and you glue and mallet them together, and it's quite easy to put together. This allows us to enable people who otherwise wouldn't have access to being able to build their own homes, the skills and tools to be able to do it themselves.
This type of building blocks allow an incredible design freedom just because they have initially no function. And again, they're almost literally like Lego blocks. You can build anything with them. You could build a sports hall with it, you could build a house with it, but you could also build benches with it or tables. It's never predefined, it's never set. So the system never tells you how you should live. Everyone can take a position on what kind of spaces they would like to live in. We're also exploring not only automation of construction, the way that we put these elements together, but we're also thinking about how automation can really generate new modes of living. For example, if elements can move, you could easily imagine that maybe 2 separate spaces would suddenly be connected to each other. If you leave your apartment in the morning, maybe during the day when you are not there, there could be a connection with the next apartment and it could become a shared workspace. So what these blocks really allow is that we can think about buildings over time. It could really be that buildings can be programmed, that for specific times of the day, maybe they adopt a certain function, and later on during the day, they adopt another function.
We're of course in the midst of a huge housing crisis, not just unique to London. I think particularly a lot of people in their 20s, in their 30s, housing is just not affordable now. What it really demonstrates is a very different way of living that isn't traditional, isn't set in the 1950s around those kind of historical familial structures. This kind of space can change, it can be very organic, it can change over time, it can adapt over time as you move through your life course and as your needs change.
I would like to see the way that we build to become much more horizontal in its nature. And in order to do that, we need people who have land and money to really begin to understand how to work in new ways and take that risk and really think about how we can enable people to engage in these processes a little bit more, to recognize that their lived experience is a form of expertise about the places that they live. And as soon as you begin to do that, you begin to really open up and unlock a new kind of way of working together that doesn't exist currently.
We really all live in roughly the same spaces. There's a 1, 2, 3 bedroom or studio typology. You know, if you ask your friends, where are you going to live? You live in a 1 bedroom or in a 2 bedroom. So what this system really allows us is to bypass those typologies and to really discuss space in very different ways. It's not about the 1 bedroom, but it's much more unique.
I think ultimately it's really turning the way that we build currently up on its head and kind of breaking down those barriers of access, not just to knowledge, but to technologies and tools.
Architecture fundamentally has to change because it's one of the most unsustainable, one of the most polluting, expensive, unequal industries. And we're obviously approaching that through the digital, because architecture and construction are one of the least digitized industries in the world. The only industry that is less digitized than architecture is hunting. And we think that the digital robots, algorithms, artificial intelligence, that it all offers an opportunity to fundamentally rethink construction, architecture, building, and as a consequence also, you know, the cities that we inhabit. We're not trying to kind of slowly, piece by piece, change an industry. We're just creating a parallel industry. We're creating a parallel possibility to say, like, look, we can really reset construction. We can reinvent it from scratch, and also we have to reinvent it from scratch if we want to change something.
We have to have cities that we've never seen before, because we are at a crux in the history of mankind where we have an ecological crisis, we have a housing crisis, we have a financial crisis, and we need to do things differently in order to sustain human development, really. And being able to do that in a way that's really community engaged and using the technologies in new ways means that we can really rethink how we might want to live together and how we might want to build together.